Bin Laden was hiding less than a mile from Pakistan's military academy in a populated city and not in some remote area. It was thought. It seems very unlikely that Osama could have lived there without some help from the Pakistani government. And looking at bin Laden's former connections in the country, it's not surprising that he could get help from Pakistan's intelligence services or others. One of Osama's wives claimed to have lived there for 5 years. Satellite images show no compound until 2005. The 21-member Special Forces team flew two helicopters to the compound undetected by Pakistani radar. The operation was done without Pakistan's knowledge, probably due to the fact that the U.S. couldn't be sure that the Pakistani Stannies wouldn't tip off Osama that U.S. forces were coming. One helicopter experienced a hard landing when it tried to set down within the compound's walls. The 10 to 12-foot concrete walls caused the helicopter to lose lift, and this disabled the helicopter and later was destroyed. The SEALs would first encounter the courier known as Arshad Khan in the guest house, and he would be the only armed resistance. The SEALs eliminated him and his wife. In the main house, the SEALs would dispatch Khan's brother as well as bin Laden's son. When the SEALs would get to Osama on the third floor, one of his wives rushed the commandos and was shot in the leg. Osama then was shot in the chest and the head. By the end of the 40-minute raid, they took bin Laden's computers, files, and the bodies of his son and himself. The SEALs took pictures to document the body as well as removing a finger to use for DNA analysis. Also, the whole raid was recorded on the SEALs' helmet cams. As the White House initially released details of the raid, they would give several different accounts on what had happened, trying to put a more politically correct spin on the operation. Bin Laden's body would be taken to the U.S. ship Carl Vinson in the Arabian Sea, where the body was cleaned and put into a shroud and given a 40-minute Islamic ceremony before the body was buried at sea. It would conclude the nearly 10-year manhunt for Osama bin Laden. The Obama administration has now stepped up its negotiations with Afghanistan's Taliban, trying to capitalize on bin Laden's death in an effort to end the 10-year war there. Afghanistan's President Hamid Karzai has been attempting to reconcile with the Taliban in order to stabilize the country. Lately, this idea has gained more support from Western nations due to increasing violence in Afghanistan and a decline in support for the war. Now that bin Laden is dead, the main reason for the start of the war, the Obama administration is looking for a way to end it and try to strengthen his case for re-election. A member of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood is now running for Egypt's presidency. Abdul Fattah, until recently, was a senior member of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood had claimed that they would not run a presidential candidate, nor attempt to gain a majority of Egypt's parliamentary seats. Abdul said he left the Brotherhood and is running as an independent. This is the same tactic that they would use when former President Hosni Mubarak banned the group from elections. Abdul Fattah also touted the Brotherhood's new political party, the Freedom and Justice Party, which he says will also be separate from the Muslim Brotherhood. There are concerns about how much power the Brotherhood will have after Egypt's first elections since the removal of Hosni Mubarak. They claim that they didn't want an Iran-style theocracy, but given their track record as liars and terrorists, you can't be sure what their true intentions are. On April 22nd, a poll by the state-run Ahram newspaper had Abdul Fattah in the lead for the presidency, with 20% of those responding to the poll giving him their support. On May 15th, violence broke out on three fronts of Israel's border. Protesters from Syria, Lebanon, and the Gaza Strip attempted to cross into Israel in protest of the founding of the nation by UN mandate in 1948. They called the day of catastrophe, or Nakba Day. At the Golan Heights, 4 people were killed when Israeli soldiers opened fire on dozens of protesters who were trying to illegally cross the border. Nearly the same circumstances would repeat themselves at the Lebanese border, with 4 more protesters killed trying to cross over that border. In the always tense Gaza Strip, 60 Palestinians were injured when Israeli defense forces fired into the crowd rushing their border. The anti-Israeli forces have started to push harder against Israel. They're trying to put the state of Israel in positions that will make them look bad to the international community. in hopes to force the creation of a Palestinian state. Not long after the Nakba Day protests, the president of the Palestinians, Mahmoud Abbas, wrote in a New York Times op-ed article that the United Nations members should support a declaration of Palestinian statehood in September of this year. He also stated that after they would get a Palestinian statehood declaration, they could bring legal action against Israel and enforce it through the UN and the International Court of Justice. He also didn't fail to bring up the Nakba Day violence in his article in support of his arguments. It seems a strong possibility that come September of this year, an attempt to create a Palestinian state at the UN may happen, and judging by Barack Obama's recent statements supporting the creation of that Palestinian state, he may help push it through. Archaeologists using satellites and infrared technology have discovered the location of more than 1,000 tombs and 3,000 ancient settlements in Egypt, as well as 2 suspected pyramids. The University of Alabama at Birmingham's Egyptologist Dr. Sarah Parcak has been one of the lead archaeologists behind the project. Her team analyzed images taken by infrared satellites orbiting 700 kilometers above the Earth. The infrared helps to locate the use of building materials under the surface of the ground, such as the use of mud bricks in house and tomb construction. The higher density of the bricks in the soil can be detected by the infrared cameras on the satellites. Dr. Parcak went to Egypt to test the accuracy of the satellite readings. Test excavations in Saqqara, Egypt found the 2 suspected pyramids there, as well as a 3,000-year-old house in Tanis, whose outside dimensions match the satellite imagery nearly perfectly. The BBC produced a documentary about these discoveries called Egypt's Lost Cities. As the use of this type of technology becomes more prevalent, it should greatly expand our knowledge as to the location of ancient settlements and help us determine the size of empires and cities. Thank you for your interest in this show, and may God bless and keep you.
The Revelation 13 podcast is hosted by Mike Hopwood and is a podcast dedicated to the study of end-time events, news events, and ancient mysteries.